Billionaire laughs at farmer's tiny market stand. Next day his stock tanks. After viral video, the slap of glass shattering on cobblestone was the first sound. A sharp, violent crack that sliced through the Saturday morning buzz of the green market. It was followed by a slow, viscous spill. A glistening amber wave that crept across the uneven stones, swallowing a stray daisy petal in its path. Liquid gold, thick with the scent of clover and summer sun, pooling in the dirt. Alistair Finch didn't flinch. He simply stared down at the mess his careless gesture had made, a small, superior smile playing on his lips. He was a man carved from a different material than the people who milled around him. His suit was a whisper of charcoal gray silk, so finely tailored it seemed to repel the very dust of the market. His shoes, gleaming black leather, were planted a careful distance from the spreading honey. His face was all sharp angles and bored arrogance. A face that graced the covers of business magazines under headlines like The Disruptor and The Visionary. Here, among the splintered wooden crates and hand-painted signs, he looked like a predator that had wandered into a petting zoo. The old man behind the stall, Samuel, stared at the broken jar. His face, a roadmap of sun and seasons, seemed to crumble inward. Every line deepened, the creases around his eyes tightening. He looked from the wasted honey to Alistair's impassive face. That was my best, Samuel whispered, his voice raspy, thick with the disbelief that was quickly curdling into pain. The first harvest of the season. Alistair let out a soft, dismissive chuckle. It wasn't a laugh of mirth. It was a sound of pure contempt. A puff of air that said, "This is all so pathetic." "Your best," Alistair echoed, his voice carrying with the easy authority of a man who owned boardrooms and commanded fortunes. He gestured vaguely at the small, humble display. "Let's be honest, old man. Your best is a rounding error in my daily coffee budget. How much for the jar? $20, $30. He reached into his pocket, not for a wallet, but for a thick, sterling silver money clip. Peeling off $100 bill, as if it were a used tissue. He didn't offer it. He held it between two fingers, a flag of his own supremacy. The market, just a moment ago, a symphony of bartering and cheerful greetings, had fallen into a pocket of stunned silence. Shoppers with their canvas bags and parents with strollers had stopped, turning to watch the unfolding drama. The air, thick with the smell of fresh bread, grilled corn, and damp earth, now carried a new scent. Humiliation. It was a sharp, metallic tang, like blood. Samuel's stall was a miniature portrait of a life's work. There were no flashy signs, no marketing gimmicks, just pyramids of lumpy, heirloom tomatoes in shades of crimson and gold, baskets of misshapen but fragrant peaches, and bundles of herbs tied with simple twine, and the honey, jars of it, in varying shades, from pale lemon to deep mahogany, each with a handwritten label: wildflower, buckwheat, lavender infused. Now, the centerpiece, the largest jar, was a glittering ruin at Alistair Finch's feet. "It's not about the money," Samuel said, his voice gaining a sliver of strength. He straightened his back, the worn fabric of his plaid shirt pulling tight across his stooped shoulders. His hands, gnarled and stained with soil, rested on the edge of his wooden table. They were hands that had coaxed life from the earth for over 60 years. Alistair's smile widened, becoming a full-blown sneer. This was the part he enjoyed. The assertion of dominance. It was the same thrill he got from a hostile takeover, just on a smaller, more intimate scale. He let his gaze sweep over the stall, over the humble offerings, and the old man's weathered face. "Of course it's about the money," Alistair said, his voice a condescending purr. "It's always about the money. You people," he waved, a dismissive hand, encompassing not just Samuel but the entire market. "You romanticize this. Dirt under your fingernails. A little stall, selling your produce." He said the word produce like it was a contagion. "It's a quaint little hobby. A costume you wear for the city folk who want to feel virtuous for a weekend. But it's poverty. Glorified, farm-toteable poverty." He leaned in closer, his expensive cologne sterile. Citrus and cedar scent invading Samuel's space, clashing with the honest smell of loam and honey. "Let me give you some free advice. This business model is a failure. There's no scalability, no brand synergy. You're a dinosaur, waiting for the asteroid." He then did something that sealed the moment in the minds of everyone watching. He reached out, his perfectly manicured fingers hovering over a basket of small, dirt-caked potatoes. He picked one up, holding it between his thumb and forefinger, as if it were a slug. The potato was small, unassuming, but honest. It was real. This, Alistair announced to the silent, watching crowd. Holding the potato aloft like a piece of evidence in a trial is what failure looks like. It's inefficient. It's ugly. My company, Finch Foods, we can produce 10,000 perfect, uniform, clean potatoes in the time it takes you to dig up this one sad little lump of starch. He held the potato for a beat longer, ensuring every eye was on him. Then, with a look of profound disgust, he opened his fingers and let it drop. It didn't fall back into the basket. It fell to the cobblestones, landing with a soft, dull thud next to the spreading pool of honey. A single, humbled potato, lying in the sweet, sticky grave of the season's first harvest. He tossed the $100 bill onto the table. It landed on a pile of kale, a stark white rectangle against the deep green leaves. "For your trouble," Alistair said, turning his back on the old farmer. He walked away, his security detail parting the crowd like a ship's prow through water, leaving behind a shattered jaw, a wasted product, and a deeply fractured silence. No one moved. No one spoke. The shoppers, the other vendors, they all just stared. They looked at the old man, his face a mask of quiet devastation, and at the $100 bill lying on his kale like a final insult. But one person had done more than watch. Tucked away behind a stall selling artisanal cheese, a 17-year-old girl named Maya had her phone held steady, its camera lens capturing every single second. The sneer, the condescending words, the dropped potato, the pristine bill on the humble greens. She hadn't planned it. It was instinct. She saw the slick suit and the expensive shoes and smelled trouble. She'd hit record just as Alistair had opened his mouth. Now, she looked down at the screen, her heart pounding. The footage was perfect. It was damning. It was, she realized with a jolt, that was part fear and part exhilaration. Pure gold. The drive back to the farm was a blur for Samuel. The familiar rattle of his old pickup truck. The winding country roads flanked by fields of green corn. The way the afternoon light slanted through the ancient oak trees, none of it registered. He was still back at the market, standing in a circle of pitying eyes, the billionaire's words echoing in his ears. A dinosaur. Poverty. Failure. He parked the truck beside a weathered red barn, its paint peeling like a sunburn. The farmhouse itself was a simple, two-story structure of white clapboard, with a wide porch holding two rocking chairs that had seen more sunsets than Alistair Finch had seen board meetings. It was quiet. The only sounds were the rustle of leaves in the breeze and the distant, contented clucking of his chickens. He didn't go inside. Instead, he walked past the house, his boots crunching on the gravel path, and went to the heart of his world, the fields. He stood at the edge of a plot of land, the dark, rich soil stretching out before him. He knelt down, the joints in his knees cracking in protest, and scooped up a handful of earth. He let the soil run through his fingers. It wasn't just dirt. It was a living thing, a complex ecosystem he had spent a lifetime nurturing. It was crumbly and dark, teeming with unseen life, smelling of rain and decay and creation. He thought of Alistair Finch's clean, sterile hands, hands that only touched contracts and keyboards and money. They had never felt this. They had never felt the profound, grounding reality of the earth. Failure. The word was a poisoned dart in his soul. Had it all been a failure? 60 years of rising before the sun, of battling droughts and floods and early frosts. 60 years of saving seeds, of rotating crops, of building up this soil until it was the envy of every farmer in the county. He had never gotten rich. He had no stock portfolio, no vacation homes. He had this land, this soil, these calloused, stained hands. He looked at his hands, really looked at them. They were maps of his life. The scar on his thumb from a slipped grafting knife when he was 20. The permanent grit embedded in his cuticles. The strength in his grip that could still gentle a newborn lamb, or pull the most stubborn of weeds. These were not the hands of a failure. These were the hands of a creator. A memory surfaced, sharp and unwelcome. Another man with clean hands. Alistair's father, Franklin Finch. They had been young then, just out of agricultural college, full of dreams. Samuel had been the innovator, the one with the radical ideas about symbiotic crop planting and natural pest deterrence. Franklin had been the businessman, the smooth talker, the one who knew how to turn ideas into profit. They had been partners, friends, even until Franklin had taken Samuel's research, his painstakingly documented formulas for soil enrichment, filed a patent under his own name, and founded Finch Foods. He'd offered Samuel a pittance, a consulting fee, and cut him out completely. Samuel, betrayed and heartbroken, had taken the small sum and bought this piece of land. Turning his back on the world of corporate agriculture forever, he had never spoken of it again. He had poured his genius not into patents and profits, but into this soil. The honey, he thought of the shattered jar. That wasn't just honey. It was the culmination of a decade of work. He'd been carefully cultivating a specific strain of bee, cross-pollinating specific species of clover and wildflowers he'd developed himself. The honey contained a unique, incredibly stable enzyme. An enzyme that, when introduced to soil, could triple the nitrogen-fixing capabilities of common legumes. It could, in theory, revolutionize organic farming, eliminating the need for any form of commercial fertilizer, organic or otherwise. It was his quiet masterpiece, the work he was doing not for money, but for the planet, for the future. And Alistair Finch had smashed it on the ground and called it poverty. A slow, hot anger began to burn through the shame. It was a clean, righteous anger, the anger of a man whose life's work had been desecrated by an ignorant fool. He wasn't a dinosaur. He was the future. Alistair Finch, with his factories churning out processed food-like substances, stripping the land and poisoning the water table. He was the dinosaur. A big, shiny, destructive dinosaur, blissfully unaware of the asteroid hurtling its way. Samuel stood up, his knees groaning but his spine straight. He looked out at his fields, not as a failure, but as a king surveying his kingdom. It was a kingdom of life, of resilience, of quiet, unshakable truth, and he would not let it be defiled. He didn't know how, but he knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his bones, that this was not the end. The earth was patient, but sometimes it demanded a reckoning. Maya couldn't eat. She couldn't sit still. She paced the length of her small bedroom, her phone clutched in her hand like a holy relic. The video had been uploaded to TikTok 3 hours ago. Her caption was simple. Devastatingly so. CEO of Finch Foods, $FNCH. Alistair Finch teaches an old farmer about scalability. For the first hour, it was quiet. A few dozen views. A handful of comments from her friends. "Oh my God," one wrote. "What a jerk." Then, something happened. A small-time food blogger with 20,000 followers shared it. Then a local news reporter retweeted that. Suddenly, it was like she'd lit a match in a fireworks factory. Her phone began to vibrate uncontrollably. A ceaseless, buzzing tremor against her palm. Notifications flooded her screen in an unreadable torrent. Likes, shares, comments, duets, stitches. The view count exploded. 10,000, 50,000, 200,000, a million. The hashtag started trending on its own. Hashtag boycott. Then hashtag Farmer Samuel. Then hashtag PotatoGate. People weren't just watching. They were reacting with a visceral fury. The comments were a tidal wave of outrage. The arrogance. "I'm throwing out every Finch product in my pantry right now. That old man is my grandfather. He's all of our grandfathers. This is disgusting. Look at his face. That's the face of a man who has never known a single day of hardship. Potatogacci. Potatogacci." Let's make this potato more famous than Alistair Finch. People started duetting the video. A chef in Chicago stitched it, silently holding up a beautiful, organic potato and giving a solemn nod of respect. A group of young farmers in Idaho posted a video of themselves holding up their own harvests, with the caption, "This is what success looks like, Mr. Finch." Hashtag Farmer Samuel. A graphic designer created a stylized image of the lone potato on the cobblestone, turning it into a symbol of defiance. By evening, it had escaped the orbit of TikTok and entered the wider internet. It was on Twitter, on Reddit's front page, on Facebook feeds across the country. News outlets began to pick it up. Forbes, Business Insider, The New York Times. The headlines wrote themselves. Billionaire CEO mocks farmer in viral video. Sparks nationwide backlash. Then came the celebrities. Mark Ruffalo tweeted it. Chris Evans shared it on Instagram with a simple heart emoji, next to hashtag Farmer Samuel, a mega popular pop star whose entire brand was built on down-to-earth authenticity. Posted a long story about growing up on a farm and how Finch's behavior was a betrayal of the American spirit. The system wasn't just trembling. It was having a full-blown seizure. The video was no longer just a video. It was a movement. A symbol of the vast, gaping chasm between the 1% and everyone else. Alistair Finch hadn't just knocked over a jar of honey. He had stepped on a landmine of cultural resentment that had been buried just beneath the surface, and Maya had captured the blast in perfect high definition. Clarity. Her bedroom felt like the epicenter of an earthquake. Her phone was hot too. The touch. She looked at the view count again. 50 million. It was a number so large, it was meaningless. She thought of the old farmer. She hoped he was okay. She hoped, somehow, this digital hurricane would bring him some measure of justice. Not more pain. Just then, an email landed in her inbox. The subject line was stark, urgent, and confidential. Regarding your video. It was from a senior partner at a major international law firm. The first line read, "On behalf of our client, Finch Foods Global, we would like to schedule a call to discuss a mutually beneficial resolution." Maya's blood ran cold. A mutually beneficial resolution. She knew exactly what that meant. They weren't going to sue her. They were going to try to buy her. Her family was struggling. Her dad had been laid off from the local auto plant 6 months ago. Her mum was working 2 jobs. The college acceptance letter sitting on her desk felt more like a bill than a congratulations. The money they would offer, it could solve every problem her family had. She read the email again. All she had to do was take down the video. Maybe release a statement. Say it was a misunderstanding, a social experiment, a deepfake. They would write the script for her. All she had to do was sell out. Sell out the truth. Sell out the old man with the kind, sad eyes. Her finger hovered over the reply button. The weight of that single tap felt immense, a choice between her family's future and a justice she had accidentally stumbled upon. The wrong choice felt so tempting. What would she do? What would anyone do? The billionaire's world had finally reached out and touched hers, not with contempt, but with the cold, heavy promise of cash. The temptation was a bitter poison, and it was spreading through her veins just as surely as that honey had spread across the cobblestones. Alistair Finch's Monday began not with the gentle hum of his smart home arousing him, but with the frantic, percussive ringing of his phone at 5 a.m. It was Marcus Thorne, his head of PR, and he sounded like he was having a panic attack. "Turn on the news, Alistair." "Any channel." Alistair did, and his blood turned to ice. His face was everywhere. The video was playing on a loop. There he was, sneering, dropping the potato. Pundits were dissecting his every word, his body language, his soulless expression. The Chiron on CNBC read, "Finch Foods in freefall, CEO's viral gaffe, wipes billions off market cap." He switched channels. A panel of marketing experts was discussing the catastrophic brand damage. A food activist was calling him the Marie Antoinette of the modern food system. The hashtag boycott Finch was being displayed in a live feed, ticking upwards at a dizzying rate. He threw the remote against the wall. It shattered. This was impossible. It was a nothing, a nobody, farmer and a stupid potato. How could this be happening? He stormed into his home office, a vast space of glass and steel overlooking the city. His trading terminal was a sea of red. FNCH was down 15% in pre-market trading. That was $12 billion. Gone. Evaporated into the digital ether. Because of a 2-minute video, his phone rang again. It was the board of directors, demanding an emergency meeting. Then his biggest celebrity endorser, a squeaky clean NFL quarterback, called to personally tell him their multi-million-dollar partnership was terminated, effective immediately. "I can't be associated with this, Alistair. My brand is about family, about integrity." Next, it was Planet Pantry, the nation's largest organic grocery chain. A brand Finch Foods had spent $500 million acquiring last year to bolster its healthy image. Their CEO informed him they were pulling all Finch products from their shelves nationwide. The irony was a physical blow. The very division meant to give him credibility in the world he'd just mocked was now leading the exodus. The power flip was swift and brutal. Karma wasn't just hitting back. It was using a sledgehammer. The respect he had commanded, built on a carefully constructed image of ruthless genius, was gone. Replaced by a new image, a petty, out-of-touch bully. He called Marcus back. "Fix this," he roared. "I don't care what it costs. Find the girl who posted the video. Pay her off. Find the old man. Give him a new farm, a new truck, whatever he wants. Just make this go away." We're trying, Alistair, Marcus said, his voice strained. "We made an offer to the girl. A big one, 7 figures. She hasn't responded." For Samuel, he was proving even more elusive. A news crew had tracked down his farm, but he wasn't talking. He'd put up a simple, hand-painted sign at the end of his driveway. It said, "Land is fine. Crops are fine. I am fine. Now please, let a man work in peace." This response, in its simple dignity, was more damaging than any angry tirade would have been, and made him a folk hero. People started sending him money via a GoFundMe set up by a web. It crashed the site twice. Local farmers organized a guard for Samuel, taking turns sitting at the end of his driveway to politely turn away the media circus, creating an even more powerful visual of community solidarity. The hero wasn't asking for respect. He was earning it by simply being himself. The villain was losing everything by trying to buy his way out of a problem he couldn't comprehend. The emergency board meeting was a bloodbath. Alistair, accustomed to controlling every room he entered, found himself on the defensive, his justifications and apologies falling on deaf ears. They didn't care about the context, they cared about the stock price. They cared about the brand partners fleeing in droves. This is a betrayal of shareholder trust. Alistair, said one grim-faced board member, your personal conduct has inflicted material damage on this company. They forced him to film a public apology. He sat in a studio, lights glaring, reading from a teleprompter full of words written by Marcus's team. I want to express my deepest, most sincere remorse. My actions were inexcusable. I have reached out to Mr. Samuel to apologize personally. It was a disaster. His heart wasn't in it, and it showed. His eyes were cold, his delivery stiff. The internet immediately tore it apart. The worst non-apology apology I've ever seen. He's not sorry for what he did. He's sorry he got caught. The video of his apology got more dislikes than any video in YouTube history. The stock, which had briefly stabilized, took another nosedive. By the end of the day, Alistair Finch was a pariah. He was a meme. He was a business school case study in what not to do. He sat alone in his penthouse, the city lights twinkling below like a galaxy of witnesses to his fall. He had built an empire on the idea of control, of predicting and manipulating markets. And he had been brought down by a farmer, a teenage girl, and a potato. The world he had so confidently dismissed had risen up and swallowed him whole. The karma was swift, it was public, and it was utterly devastating. The twist didn't come from a press release or a news report. It came from an old, leather-bound ledger, discovered in a dusty attic by Franklin Finch's forgotten granddaughter Liz, estranged cousin. While cleaning out her late father's estate, she had no love for Alistair, and had been following the #PotatoGate saga with quiet satisfaction. When she found the ledger, she knew she was holding a bomb. She sent it not to the media, but to the one person she felt deserved to see it. Maya, who had spent 2 days agonizing over the 7-figure offer from Finch's lawyers, received the scanned pages via an anonymous email. The subject line was just one word: justice. She opened the file. The pages were filled with her grandfather's elegant, looping script. It was a detailed research journal from the 1980s, and there, on page after page, was the truth. The chemical formulas, the diagrams for crop rotation, the early theories on soil microbiome enrichment, it was all there. And it was all signed with the name, Samuel Abernathy. But the most damning page was the last one. It was a draft of a partnership agreement between Samuel Abernathy and Franklin Finch, and scrawled in the margins, in Franklin's spiky, aggressive handwriting, were notes: SA2 trusting, won't notice clause 12.b, patent ownership, transfer, offer small buyout, file solo. It wasn't just a business dispute. It was a calculated act of theft. The entire foundation of the multi-billion-dollar Finch Foods global empire was built on a lie, on a patent stolen from the very man his son had humiliated 40 years later. Suddenly, everything was reframed. This wasn't a random encounter. It was the second act of a tragedy, a karmic echo resounding through the decades. Alistair hadn't just mocked a farmer. He had mocked the uncredited, unacknowledged ghost in his own machine, the true source of his family's obscene wealth. And the honey, Maya remembered the way the old man had looked at the shattered jar. That was my best. It had to be connected. She did a deep dive, cross-referencing agricultural journals with university biochemistry archives. She found a single, obscure, paper published by A.S. Abernathy 30 years ago, hypothesizing about the potential for cultivated enzymes in apium products to act as hyper-effective biofertilizers. The puzzle pieces clicked into place with an audible snap. The honey Alistair had so casually destroyed wasn't just a product. It was the culmination of Samuel's stolen legacy, a second-generation innovation that could render Finch Foods' entire chemical fertilizer division obsolete. Alistair hadn't just smashed a jar of honey. He'd smashed the very thing that could have saved his company, and the planet along with it. Maya now held the real story. It was infinitely bigger than a bully billionaire. It was about legacy, betrayal, and a stolen future. The offer from Finch's lawyers was still sitting in her inbox. 7 figures. A new life for her family. All she had to do was press delete on this new information and take the money. This was the true moral dilemma. Before, it was about taking money to silence a truth that was already public. Now, it was about taking money to bury a much deeper, more profound truth forever. Taking the money would make her complicit in the original sin of the Finch empire. It would mean Samuel would never be recognized. His legacy forever erased. She thought about her father. His pride bruised by unemployment. The worry lines etched around her mother's eyes. That money could fix everything. It was the wrong but tempting moment turned up to its highest volume. She could be a hero to her family. Or she could be a hero to a man she'd never even spoken to. She closed her eyes. She pictured Alistair Finch's sneer. She pictured Samuel's gentle, soil-stained hands. She pictured the single potato, lying rejected in the dirt. Her choice became clear. It wasn't a choice between money and morality. It was a choice about what kind of world she wanted to live in. One where the Franklin Finches and their sons always won. Or one where a quiet man with honest hands could finally have his day in the sun. She didn't reply to the lawyers. She didn't leak the documents to the press. She printed out the scanned pages of the ledger and the scientific paper, put them in a simple manila envelope, and drove the 2 hours out to the countryside. She drove to the farm with a hand-painted sign at the end of the lane. She was going to deliver the truth to the only person who had a right to decide what to do with it. She was giving the power back to Farmer Samuel. When Samuel opened the envelope, he did so slowly, his gnarled fingers surprisingly deft. He read the pages from his old ledger, his own handwriting, a ghost from a past life. He saw Franklin's treacherous notes in the margins. A lifetime of quiet, buried pain washed over his face. It wasn't anger. It was a deep, profound sorrow. The sorrow of a wound that had never properly healed. He looked at Maya, this young girl with fire and integrity in her eyes, who had turned down a fortune to bring him this truth. He looked at the documents, the proof of his stolen legacy. He could sue. He could destroy what was left of Alistair Finch and his company. He could claim the billions that should have been his. The world would expect him to. The world would cheer for it. But Samuel Abernathy had spent 40 years cultivating a different kind of wealth. He walked over to his porch and sat down in his rocking chair, the documents resting on his lap. "He was my friend," Samuel said, his voice quiet, directed at the rolling fields before him. "Before the money, before the patents. We used to walk fields like this and dream about changing the world. I guess we just had different ideas about what that meant." He had the power to complete Alistair's ruin. But what would that accomplish? More hatred? More headlines? He had already won. The world had seen the difference between them. The world had seen the value of his work, not in dollars, but in dignity. He made his decision. He wouldn't sue. He wouldn't go to the press. He would do something far more radical. The next day, a statement was released. Not from a lawyer, but from Samuel himself. Handwritten and posted as a picture online by Maya. "The earth is patient and forgiving," it began. "It takes what is broken and turns it into new life. A seed cannot grow without the shell first breaking. My life's work was never for sale, so it could not be stolen. It was always meant to be given away. I will be releasing all my research, including the formula for my latest soil enzyme, into the public domain. It belongs to the earth, and to any farmer who wishes to heal it. As for Mr. Finch, I hope he finds a new seed to plant." The move was a checkmate no one saw coming. It was an act of radical generosity that completely disarmed the narrative of revenge. He didn't take the money. He took the moral high ground and turned it into a garden for the entire world. The remaining investors in Finch Foods, now facing a future where their core patents were worthless and their primary competitor was a free, superior product, revolted. Alistair Finch was unceremoniously fired. The company was dismantled and sold. 4 parts. Cruelty always collects its debt, but forgiveness compounds its own interest. Samuel's quiet act of grace was a more powerful force than Alistair's billions. A more enduring legacy than any stock price. Where are you reading this from? Drop your city, your state, your country. Let's see how far this story travels. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next justice twist.